We have traced the oral tradition behind the Gospels to the written Gospels, and have seen that they are reliable as eyewitness testimony to the person and work of Jesus. But what if the copies of those written Gospels were corrupted and the original text was lost in translation?
Depending on who you talk with, there are all kinds of objections to the reliability of the Gospels, but some of the more commonly heard ones include, hasn't the Bible been copied so many times and then translated into so many different versions that we simply don't have any confidence as to what the writers originally said or meant? And usually that kind of a question comes from people who really aren't aware of the thousands of manuscripts available and the kinds of variants and differences, most of which are extremely minuscule, that one finds among them.
The number of New Testament manuscripts that we have today is a vast quantity.
As of August 2013, the grand total of Greek New Testament manuscripts stands at 5,838. This is more than 1,000 times the manuscript data for the New Testament than for the average Greco-Roman author.
That's so incredible. It's almost incomprehensible when you compare it to any other ancient literature. That comes to more than 2.6 million pages of manuscripts. It's a huge amount. That's just in Greek. Then we have the New Testament, because of the evangelistic motives of the early Christians to spread the gospel in areas where Greek was not the primary language. The New Testament got translated into Latin, into Syriac, into Coptic, into Georgian, Gothic, Armenian, Ethiopic. We have thousands of copies in those languages. We don't know the exact number. They have not yet been tabulated. In Latin alone, we have more than 10,000 copies of the New Testament, handwritten copies of the New Testament, that started to get translated in the 2nd century when the gospel spread west. In Syriac, hundreds, perhaps even a couple thousand. Same with Coptic. Our best guess on these versions, our best conservative guess on these versions, is that we have at least 15,000 handwritten copies.
The very best classical author in terms of existing manuscript copies is Homer. Manuscripts of Homer number less than 2,400, compared to the New Testament manuscripts that are approximately 10 times that amount when translations in other languages are included.
Now, when you look at all this material, you say, okay, you got 5,000, almost 6,000 for the Greek New Testament, and you got maybe 15,000 for these other languages. Surely those manuscripts aren't complete. That is correct. There's only 60 complete Greek New Testament manuscripts that have Matthew through Revelation without any gaps because they haven't fallen out somehow. However, the average Greek New Testament manuscript, the average is more than 450 pages long. And so you start multiplying these copies. We have the whole New Testament reproduced in these manuscripts hundreds and hundreds of times over. But when you compare that to other ancient Greek literature, the average Greek or Latin author has fewer than 20 copies of his writings still in existence, written in any language. You stack those up, it's maybe 4 feet high, and usually far fewer than 20 copies. The average is probably like 4 or 5 or 6. The New Testament, you stack up those manuscripts, it's over a mile high. 4 feet high, a mile high. Now, if you had a magic wand and you could wipe out all of the New Testament manuscripts in the world in one fell swoop, the Greek ones as well as all the ancient versions, we still would not be left without a witness. And that's because of the ancient church fathers. These patristic writers wrote commentaries, they wrote homilies, theological treatises, all sorts of things, and these folks did not have the gift of brevity. We have, there's a place in Boiron, Germany, where they have been tabulating these quotations and allusions to the New Testament for decades. And a couple of decades ago, they came up with more than 1 million quotations of the New Testament by these church fathers. We have, again, the whole New Testament virtually reproduced many times over just in the writings of the fathers. So the problem that we have with New Testament textual criticism is not that we have a dearth of data, which is the problem that all other ancient literature faces when it comes to reconstructing the text. The problem we have with New Testament textual criticism is we have an embarrassment of riches.